Hey there, Showa fans. Before I begin, I'd like to ask for a quick favor. After watching this video, please click like on the video link below, if you actually like it, that is, as this action can expose my video to a wider audience, which will encourage more videos to be created like this one. I always appreciate the time you make to sit through these, so I hope you'll subscribe as well. Today, 4Green is bringing you not just one, but two figure reviews for the same figure? I mean, these guys are different, yet very much the same, and I will be pointing out why when I cover Hedorah, standing and crawling landing forms. I love me some Hedorah. One of my earliest Godzilla movie memories involves the Smog monster, or as my 4-year-old son likes to call him,
Smog monster.
I'm not certain if this was the first Godzilla movie I ever saw or not, but it certainly dates to when I was either 3 or 4. I can only recall a few things too. Hedorah's flying and final forms, and the 2 times he bled out. Yes, him splatting on the pavement from his first encounter with Godzilla, and he proceeds to shit or piss himself. And when Godzilla gives him a gooey black eye. I'm not sure why that burned in my mind so much, but that's what I remember. The movie itself is regarded today as a cult classic of the series, even though the whole series also can be regarded as such. As the story goes, that producer Tomoyuki Tanaka was so disappointed in director Yoshimitsu Banno's first Godzilla effort, he forbade him from ever touching another Godzilla project. Even further irony, the modern-day MonsterVerse exists in part because of Banno's efforts to do just that. But the film is a weird entry, with psychedelia, human casualties, and body horror displayed in a way that was new to the series. It's not hard to see how Mr. Tanaka felt the series had been compromised, but afterwards, making Godzilla monsters bleed became the norm, especially in Godzilla vs. Gigan and Godzilla vs. Mechagodzilla. Still, the film has its charm, and most people I know personally who are fans of the genre regard this monster as one of their faves, and it's not hard to see why. First, he's a formidable foe, one of the few monsters that doesn't recoil from Godzilla's atomic breath. He's a massive, shambling mound of pollutants, a nice acknowledgement to the cautionary tales of man's mishandling of nature, just like Godzilla was originally conceived. Visually, his massive red eyes are mesmerizing, breaking up the gross grayish green of his sludgy or kelpy, depending on how you perceive him, body. He's dangerous to Godzilla too, emitting corrosive goop bullets, crimson eye beams when its head splits into glowing red, spewing an acid mist in flying mode, and most disgustingly, relieving himself all over Godzilla, whether that's poop or something else gross. The more I dwell on it, Hedorah's satisfied chuckle makes me think the latter. But the most interesting thing is, this monster goes through several metamorphoses throughout the movie, starting out as an oily black tadpole that becomes larger and more menacing while feeding on the pollutants of Suruga Bay. Then as he emerges from the sea, to lurk on the land in search of more toxic substances. At first on all fours, like some lump misshapen frog-like thing, huffing on a smokestack, until Godzilla spoils its meal. And that's where I stop my brief overview, to the perfect segue to these two guys. Now, Hedorah does have 2 more significant forms, but I will be covering those with their respective vinyl reviews soon. When Bandai first revealed the standing landing form, I thought, that's bizarre. I don't recall seeing him stand upright, save for a few fleeting shots. Most of the time he was crawling around on his hands and knees in this form, so it was a bit disappointing that it is until they revealed his next version shortly after. Clever Bandai, preying on the addictions of us vinyl fiends. Before we get to the individual figures, I figured I would begin with the paint apps and the general color scheme, since both are pretty much the same. Cast in a drab grayish green, both guys are highlighted with accent sprays of silver, red, and yellow, giving the illusion to polluted water or some sort of toxic muck. The silver sprays are the most sporadic, mostly showing up on the standing form's arms, lower head, and tail sections, while the crawling one sports it on its head and randomly about in lighter blasts. Add some quick hits of yellow and red in semi-striped and swirling effects, and you have achieved Hedorah's body palette. The crawling version gets more yellow, and last but most importantly, those evil eyes. I love what Bandai has done here, the vibrant red combined with the yellow iris and the piercing pupils. If I had one pick, I wish we could get the decor of those lines around the iris that could get in some of those close-up shots on screen. I'll start with the standing form since it was released first. I must admit it was an unexpected treat to know that this would be available. Most Hedorah figures in the past focused on his final form or his flying saucer, horseshoe crab / manta ray. Don't get me wrong, there have been plenty of sets that featured all of his various stages, but getting one from Bandai, never thought I'd see it. So here we have Hedorah in his first land form, obviously standing upright, and I gotta say, I can't unsee his derpy mouthful thingy. And while this may be faithful to the film's suit, it was kind of obscured by shadow or smog in the movie. Combined with his large red eyes, he looks just as confused as I am staring back at it. It's a weird fixation, I know, but Hedorah has always seemed like he was fairly featureless, facial-wise, with the exception of his ominous stare. Staying on the sculpt, the details are spot on. Hedorah is not like Anger's 55 sculpt, where the dope-defying textures are highlighted. Here there are soft creases and drippy tendrils that maintain the overall surface. While we're on that, I always interpreted that as an idea of an oozing, sludgy creature. But recently, I heard another YouTube channel describe it as a kelpy surface, which would also kind of make sense since his oceanic origins might influence his biology. Focusing on his front torso, I can't help but appreciate the faithfulness of the model down to the zipper flap dead center. There are 0 paint apps in this section, which is also faithful since the underside of the suit was barely in frame. His arms and feet have a drippy, seaweedy effect, and his arms specifically curled in a downward position. More on that later. Have a decent sculpting as well. His feet look like the drips end in mini puddles that would suggest his toes. It's a nice touch. It's funny how these recent Bandai sculptures make you appreciate the design of a kaiju, since constant movement on screen rarely gives you these opportunities. And now for the backside. Starting at the tail. I love the details here. Just another drippy, flappy appendage. Not here. We see what resembles sort of a vertebrae bone, kind of traveling dead center up to the upper back. I was unaware that the Smog monster had bones, but regardless, it adds to the bizarre biology of the spaceborne garbage feeder. Flanking the sides of this backbone on the upper back are 2 bulbous sacs. We see these things inflate in the movie as Hedorah does a massive bong rip on the smokestack when he arrives on land. Are these the source of his powers, or are these some sort of external stomachs? Something like a camel hump? I don't know. But again, nice touch, and we'll see that there's an interesting difference with his quadruped form shortly. The last thing I will point out is the seam that is a necessity to creating this figure, but it's kind of unsightly just because it's not well concealed. It detracts from what is otherwise a decent figure. So right off the bat, you can look at this figure, which you'll notice that this guy has the exact same derpy head sculpt as the previous version, which makes sense since these were probably developed at the same time. The obvious thing is, of course, the posture, on all fours, but not 4 feet, more like hands and knees. I personally prefer this of the two, as this is what I think of when I think of his first landing stage. Almost like an infant form, crawling towards his toxic baby body. The sculpt once again captures that drippy drip that is trademark Hedorah. Its hands look more like walrus flippers here, creased and not so tendril-like, and the rear feet are kind of shrunken flowers being dragged along. What can be said about the standing version is the same that can be said about here as well. The tail still displays that weird backbone design, but at its base it's flanked by those kelp-like danglies. One neat thing you can see is that back crease on this version is better integrated. It's not perfect, but much better than his standing mode. And if you compare those back humps between the two, this version looks slightly deflated, which is kind of cool if you think about it. It's Hedorah before he gets his smoke break. and the standing one seems more powered up post-cigarette. And while I prefer this pose over the prior, I must admit there's an odd unimpressiveness to it as well. It kind of comes off fairly basic. I don't know what I'm looking for, honestly, but it serves nothing more to me than a glorified statue, typical of most Hedorah Bandai vinyls. Oddly enough, both figures feature the same articulated areas. The standing version's arm can rotate to hang forward or to open out towards his sides due to the angle of the joints. This can suggest that Hedorah is about to hug his next smokestack and start inhaling. The crawling form's front arms can move forward and back, but adjusting them to get him to just stand static can prove to be challenging. And it might be just my copy, but I can't seem to get both hands to stay flat on the surface evenly. His tail, too, can rotate with both. This serves a better purpose on the standing option, as I will display in the next segment. I hate to sound so ungrateful, but the articulation for both, while we get both arms and tail, really don't add too much. I would say standing form wins here, as you can do a little bit more. Starting off with Hedorah's opponent, which is the excellent Godzilla 68 Bandai figure, you can see that they scale really well, better than his slightly off-scale final form I'll show you in a sec. These feel good squaring off, with the crawling more suitable for face-to-face confrontation display, and the standing one better utilized as, well, I'll show you. It kind of recreates a scene in the movie. Now, I was excited to see all these guys lined up, but now that I see them, there's a glaring difference between aesthetics between the two landing forms and the final form. The final form feels more textured and layered, and while the landing stages are a bit smoother and more bulbous, even with the paint application, it almost sets itself apart a little too far. I do realize that the upcoming, even smoother flying form will really throw things out of whack once we get them in the lineup, but at least the colors are uniform. I made a big deal out of that because I can't help it. As somebody who likes Hedorah, the idea of having all his evolved forms is appealing. Given that his final form has been available in various versions and colors, it was easy to think that that was the only version we'd ever get. However, in February, Hedorah's flying form will be joining Bandai Collection, and I cannot wait. It would really be neat to have the lineup of his evolution on the shelf, especially with the addition of his landing forms. But if I'm going to be honest with you, only one of these two is worth the selective purchaser's choice. And which one? I'll let good old Jaguar tell you with his fists. So there you have it. The verdict is, to me, the standing form is weirdly redundant, bridging the crawling and final form into a repetitive area. That is why if I were to have the option to choose only one, crawling would be the winner. It's more of an interesting showpiece, and it also resembles the form's on-screen look in a more iconic way. Also, the angle that you may stare at the crawling version's head will potentially hide that weird vertical mouth hole and hide that awkward look better. Both really do have their strengths, and if your shelf space will not allow for any more four-legged beasties, you might want to choose the standing version. Either way, you can never have enough Hedorah. Thank you again for watching this review, and be sure to check out the other videos already up on this channel. I hope to create even more content, but to do that, I'll need your help so I can reach more viewers. Hit like, share, and subscribe down below, and remember, you're not just doing it for me, you're doing it for Godzilla.